crew we made. Ready now, turn the page. This is where we all engage. Let the journey begin.
Welcome to Engage
with Trekkie
and Trekker. This is the podcast that boldly explores the fans behind the fandom of Star Trek. And today we have another exciting guest for you, Seán. Seán, welcome to the show. We'd love for you to introduce yourself to us.
First of all, thank you so much for having me. This is so much fun. I am delighted to be here. And I have refrained from saying this up to this moment. You have the most fabulous beard. I just want to make sure that that is clearly known as well.
Thank you, Seán.
Thank you.
That is, I mean, exactly. I did not specify who deliberately. But yeah, oh my God, thank you so much for having me here. It's a delight.
Absolutely. Tell us a little bit about you and getting involved. How did you come to know Star Trek?
So I will try and give the quick version of this. Everyone knows the time to put on the kettle and go for a walk. So easiest, the number one thing I say is it's my dad's fault. So I always start with that. I have it on good authority because there's photos that I was about 2 years old and Dad basically said, "You're watching Star Trek now," because he had been a fan since the 60s. He had watched all of the original series and then onwards. I was born February 88, so I missed Encounter at Farpoint by 4 months, that's the completionist in me is actually bothered by that. But I was around for Final Frontier, which just makes me feel older than I actually am.
Right.
and like that then, so it was instant. It was moth to a flame. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you and say that I remember being a 2-year-old watching Star Trek. However, I do vaguely, and I would have been about 3. I remember the summer of Best of Both Worlds. Not well, but I do remember that the Mr. Worf fire. I do remember that. But saying that, I don't remember Undiscovered Country being out in the cinema. Because my first Trek in the cinema was Star Trek Generations. Which in Ireland, it was a few months later. It was 95 in Ireland, whereas it was 94, I think, in the US. Right. Which means I got Generations and First Contact 1 year apart, which is very, very cool for some reason. And yeah, been a fan ever since. So then fast forward to 2020, I had done my studies in writing. I had, written a bit here or there, but I was in a completely other job altogether. And then February of 2020, you had Picard was coming out. The channel that I work for, TrekCulture, was starting a new channel called TrekCulture, and they put out a call for writers. And I applied not thinking of anything. I had not worked in this field. I had done my studies, but there was nothing else involved. So I sent in an application thinking, you'll get a thanks very much applicant 247. But also because I thought that, I literally sent them a take down the ad, I'm your man email. And thankfully they wrote back, prove it.
Nice.
And that went well. So I was like, listen, at the time, what do you want? I'll do this list, I'll do that list. I did a bunch of lists. And they were like, okay, this is, we'll keep this going. Which is good because, as I said, that was February of 2020. Right. So then a couple of months later, the funniest thing happened. Which is, okay, I'm going to be, that is a shame. I've shamelessly stolen that joke from Bo Burnham, but still. And then, so I was, like much of the world, I was laid off. Suddenly I was at home with a lot of time. Mm-hmm. And I just wrote articles. I wrote articles. And then I quickly, because there was another presenter in the beginning, but he had other things, like he was managing several sort of channels and several babies. And he was like, look, do you want to have a go at presenting? And I was like, yeah, of course, and proceeded to scream with panic in a corner. So I did a video on Lower Decks, and since about June of 2020, this has been my day job. And now I write about Star Trek, I present about Star Trek, and I get to meet lovely people like yourselves. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Beautiful.
Awesome. Wow.
That is awesome. And just if you care to share what's the name of your show, if you don't mind?
The channel is TrekCulture, and then there's
TrekCulture. Okay.
everything under there. I do. We do
Okay.
probably the thing we know. Try that again in English or Klingon. Probably the thing I'm known the most for is the ups and downs. We do the ups and downs of every new episode, and that is it's exactly what it sounds like. Here's the bits we liked. Here's the bits we didn't. Most of them, well, okay. So they used to run about between 20 and 25 minutes. It's funny looking back at it now because now they run about the length of the episode themselves, with the exception of Section 31, which I received a little bit of feedback might have been too long because it was 20 minutes longer than the movie itself.
You had a lot to say.
I had a lot to say about that. I was fair. I went through it bit by bit. I went through it, but there was a bit to discuss in that way.
Nice.
No one can ever say that you were bored after that. I will say that. Nobody can claim that about Section 31. So yeah, so that's the sort of the spiel, the who I am, the what I do, and years ago when people said like, Sean, you need help, I said no, what I need is a direction, and this is what we've done now. So we've directed it all into this.
Absolutely, boldly going forward. I love it. Mm-hmm.
Cool. Well, Sean, I'm going to put you on the spot since you've watched Star Trek. And obviously this could change on any given day, but if you had to pinpoint your favorite character, what character would you choose?
Easiest answer in the world. Okay. He is a plain, simple tailor. He is Elim Garak from Deep Space Nine.
Okay.
Just
and why?
Absolutely. Oh, and why? I mean, how long have you got? So, I mean, like the first reason why is he's just fun. He's fun to watch. When he's being bad, he's fun. When he's being good, he's fun. There's never a dull moment when Garak's on screen. And so, because DS9 is my first Star Trek where I was there from Emissary till What You Leave Behind. Because as I say, very annoyed I missed Encounter at Farpoint. So yeah, so DS9 was my first one all the way through. And then for so many reasons, it's my favorite Star Trek. For just so many, but not least of which being the supporting character cast. Because the main character cast, brilliant, but Deep Space Nine, without question, has the strongest ensemble of them all. And I think its setting of a stationary station. There we go, alliteration. It allowed you to do that. Something could happen one week, and you would deal with the fallout of it the next week. It was like It wasn't the first show to ever do serialization, far from it. But in the Star Trek universe, it was one of the earlier experiments in it. Mm-hmm. And again, which brings me back to watching Garak's arc over the 7 seasons that he's in. Because he's there from episode 2. Maybe it's episode 3. I always get Man Alone and Past Prologue mixed up. So he's there from Past Prologue. And I mean, if you go back and watch him now, and is he over the top in camp? Yes. Is it brilliant? Yes.
Yes.
And that development, like The Wire, is an all-time great episode. And then it flips on a dime. You have Arman Bashir, and you have this same character who has the darkest backstory. He's a complete out-and-out just comedy character as well. And it stems from, obviously, the writing, but Andrew Robinson's performance as well, because I have a terrible confession to make. In all these years of loving Andrew Robinson, I've never seen Dirty Harry, so I never saw him as the Scorpio killer. I really, for the longest time, only ever saw him as Garak. Once I was over age and allowed to watch these movies, I watched the first Hellraiser movie, not knowing he was in it. So the credits start, and I'm like, starring who? Absolutely brilliant. Because I went to see a cinema screening of it. The guy was with me, turned around and laughed because he knew he had seen the film before, and he was like, hee 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 hee. And I'm like, kind of, these Cenobites are screwed. They're going up against Garak, they're going to lose. But all this to say, just engaging, and also, in many ways, he is the antithesis of Star Trek.
Mm-hmm.
He is, so many things about him are seemingly at odds with you know, you go back and you think Gene Roddenberry's Star Trek is, and this very idealized version of a future. And like you could say that he is Deep Space Nine in a kind of in a singular character. Like, how would you describe Deep Space Nine? Follow Garak. That's Deep Space Nine. You know, you have your good bits, you have your Starfleet there doing the whole raising the flag and everything. But what you also have is everything else. And where the original series, please stop me, by the way, if I'm monologuing, because I just get into this rhythm. So do tell me to shut up, honest to God.
All right. This is what we geek out on.
Right. You're speaking to my heart, Sean, so you keep going.
Because in my personal opinion, right, there's many people, TOS is peak Trek, Next Gen is peak Trek. To some people, possibly not many, animated series is peak Trek. Although I have so much love for the animated series, please don't get me wrong. Yeah. But where I think Deep Space Nine sits is where I think it was the most realistic Star Trek that I think they had got to at that point. Because the original series, I remember I've made this point before, when you think of the utopian Roddenberry's future, that's the Next Generation. It's not the original series. Yeah. The original series, it was being made in the 60s with the context of the 60s it's being made in. It's got, you know, it's funny because it's got very capitalistic views while it's also got very socialism. Or a lot of socialism views in there as well. And I think sometimes they blend better than others, but they're still both there and they're a bit more blatant because it was more of a statement in the 60s. Like we always often, one of them, but we use the example when people are going, oh, Star Trek does politics now. It's like, Star Trek's been doing politics since the start. But I think it's funny because a lot of the things we now take for granted are complete statements of, oh my God, in the 60s. Like, I know it sounds so cliched, but having Uhura and Sulu and Chekhov on the bridge in the original series was as in your face as having a married gay couple was in Discovery, or having a trans or non-binary character was in Discovery. These things that today people are like, oh, you're shoving this in our faces. Like, or Star Trek used to be subtle. No, it didn't.
Oh.
No, it didn't. Like, Star Trek and subtlety don't live in the same universe. Now, does the presentation of the message change over time? Sure it does. But again, I wouldn't accuse Star Trek of subtlety because I think that would be doing it such a disservice. You know, particularly in the 60s, it couldn't do subtle. It could do allegory, which it did a lot. I mean, and it still does a lot. Yeah. And then you go forward into the Next Generation, where the Next Generation, everything's on a carpet and, you know, it's all comfortable seats, and we'll have a chat with these people. I describe it like the Golden Girls in space, which, you know, is just, that's the Enterprise D to me. Like, you know, kind of, you know, we're bringing the Cardassians over for a chat. We'll meet them on the lanai. And that's part of the joy. And yet even in that, because you've got this whole late 80s sort of post-Cold War, because TNG is post-Cold War, whereas TOS is directly in the Cold War. You have that sort of optimism that I think was in the air at the moment. Fall of the Berlin Wall comes 1991. I always get them mixed up because obviously Undiscovered Country is fall of the Berlin Wall. And you get this with the Enterprise D, which is a floating town in space, because that's the point. It's all about colonization, you know, meeting new worlds, but seeding new worlds as well. It's about, you know, expansion, but always presented in this positive way, which indeed in TNG's time, it largely was a positive. It's only in later TNG with the introduction of the Maquis where you start to go, maybe there's another side to this. You know, we always look at Starfleet as the good guys because by and large they had been up to that point. And then you get the sort of, well, it depends where you're standing, doesn't it? You know, when you have other races going, you're getting a bit close to our territory here. But they're presented as the baddie. The Romulans are the baddies. It's so funny. If you look, the first 4 seasons of The Next Generation, the Romulans are out and out villains until they're kind of not. And then they start to get a little bit more depth. The Klingons came across quite well for the most part in The Next Generation. Obviously, in no small part, thanks to people like Worf. Gowron, great kind of arc. Obviously, that one goes over to DS9. But then as we get into the later seasons and you have the introduction of the Borg. Do you remember when the Borg used to turn up every couple of seasons as opposed to every couple of episodes?
Yep.
And then you get to, you've now expanded so far. Starfleet is so vast and the Federation is so vast that it's great if you're on Earth. Or if you're on Vulcan or even Andor, it's brilliant because you're right in, or Andor, another show altogether, brilliant show.
Yep.
Like it's fantastic to live there. So what happens when you're on the very fringes of territory? What happens when you don't have the fleet behind you? Like it's easy for, okay, in fairness, a Galaxy class starship is a small fleet unto itself, but it's easy to stand up to somebody when you've got 20 starships behind you. It's a bit like they're shaking their finger at you and everyone else is leaning out from behind you going, yeah. Like that's, the interior of the Federation. Now you go to Deep Space Nine and you are the minority. You are not the power in the quadrant, but you are not the power in that sector. So then you have the amazing backdrop of the occupation of Bajor, and you have. I'm still on the Garak buzz. That's the funny thing.
Yeah.
And then you have this character who is technically he's the enemy. He is. You see him throughout DS9. He is an apologist for the occupation. He is not a straightforward, I'm against the Cardassians and I'm against what they did. He's not. He just fell out of favor with, when people like Dukat came to power, even in Abrantane, he fell out of favor with them, but he is very much a Cardassian, which you had your Jim Kirks and your Spocks. You had your Rikers, your Picards, and even your Worfs. Now, Worf was very much a Klingon, but he was a Starfleet officer. And that was always his dichotomy. It was sort of Starfleet first with the challenge of, I am still a Klingon, how do I reconcile that? Garak doesn't have that challenge. What he does have is that I am a Cardassian on my own in the land of my enemy. I am still myself and I'm going to remain myself. But how do I make that work when the others aren't like me? He is not militaristic, but he also, he goes on and he believes in it's sad, but orphans have no place in Cardassian society. He's like, I'm not here to change that. It is what it is. And that's a lot of what Garak does. He's not the idealist. He's not the one who's pushing for change. He is our greatest glimpse into, I think, one of the better developed alien races that Star Trek has done. We've got so much of the Klingons, which I'm really happy about. And there's so much about the Klingons to like. The depiction of the Romulans has been up, down, side to side, and there's a lot of different sort of depictions of them, a lot of which are brilliant, and some of which are a bit maybe one-dimensional. And could someone please tell me where the hell the Remans have gone? I know.
Like here's this big reveal. There's the Remans here, and then whoosh, never.
Exactly, kind of the somewhat supernova. Cool, but they got off, right?
They're back.
They got off, right?
On the dark side of the moon, I think. So,
and then you have this Cardassian race. There's jumping right to the end of Deep Space Nine. There's a line that Martok says when himself, Admiral Ross, and Sisko are standing in the ruins of Cardassia Prime. And he says, Bajorans would call this poetic justice. And I'm thinking, this is 1999.
Yeah.
And you say Trek isn't subtle today.
Right.
And that is, again, just one of the reasons why Garak is my favorite character, hands down. Both for Garak being an amazing character and Andrew Robinson being an amazing performer. But also, as I say, he is, in my opinion, the best symbol you can give for not what Star Trek is, but what Deep Space Nine is. Garak is you had the Romulans of the original series where you could understand them, they were different. You had, say, maybe the Klingons of the next generation. They weren't enemies anymore, but they were still different or whatever. The Cardassians of Deep Space Nine is, buddy, you are out of your depth.
I like that.
Pause for breath.
No, I was talking to actually Trekker about this the other day. Again, this year's we're already in July now. But anyway, I love Garak, and we were talking. I actually named my kitten Elim Garak. So he runs out in the
Amazing.
backyard, and I'll be saying, "Elim Garak, get back here," or something, or "Time to come in." And finally, my neighbor behind me finally goes, "Who is Elim Garak?" So I got to nerd out explaining my poor simple Taylor to him, and he's like, "Oh, well, I've never thought of it that way." And so he's actually watching Deep Space Nine now. So I mean, right, little victories here, but you really made my heart beat and flutter when you said Elim Garrett, because
Now he's going to be
for
out there
him
yelling
only
Garrett.
going to be a one off, or for that one show to make Bashir uncomfortable, and for him to just, I mean, he's, as far as I'm concerned, he's one of the main cast. I get excited when I see him, and he's not, of course, in every episode through all 7 seasons, but I get excited when I see Andrew Robinson pop up. So,
Sean,
Well-
and your very detailed answer about your favorite character really highlights the fact that a lot of us Star Trek fans really geek out and really get into and hypotheticalize in our brains. Obviously, you've given a lot of thought to this, and I love that. I love that. And the fact that you write for it and do TrekCulture, that just shows even more so how much your brain likes to really, what do we say, hyperfocus probably? It's definitely one
that's
of
the
my
perfect word.
So yeah, so I love that. And then it also makes me wonder, what's your favorite episode or movie?
So my favorite episode, so it is an episode, but I can also discuss favorite movie because that changes time to time. But I do have episodes. Now, I'm not going to surprise you when I say it's from Deep Space Nine.
What?
But the surprise being, funny enough, it's not a Garak episode. So my favorite episode overall is The Visitor.
Yes.
And which has only, I suppose, taken on another dimension now that Tony Todd has passed away. But I remember watching that. So, there was 1994, 1995. It might be a bit late, but 1996. Way of the Warrior, amazing. Like I'm 8 or 9 years old at this point, just going, this is amazing. These are all the ships I've always loved. I've got a Klingon battlecruiser behind me right there. Love that. And then in theory, along comes this really small scale bottle show. And now I'm not going to pretend that at that age I understood bottle shows or, the scale of things. I just knew we went from boom, boom, bang, bang to old man talking in a thing. But even then, I remember, actually, funny enough, there is a Garak connection here, which I'll come back to in a second. But even then, I thought, I love this. Whatever way I would have phrased it when I watched it on the first way around, like, I look, this is great. This is, this fantastic. As the years have gone on, I think it's perfect Star Trek because of how much it's only barely Star Trek. You have you've got the sci-fi MacGuffin of the week, which does, it obviously sets up the, how we can do this story. But it's everyone delivers. And I do agree with the choice at the time of not trying to put Sirach in old age makeup. I think Sirach, he got a bit of a rough deal sometimes with, to be honest, some of the scripts he was given, but also he was a kid, and this is a big ask of a young actor, not that they can't do it. I'm just saying that this was a big ask.
Yeah.
And then, it's funny looking back in time now, Tony Todd had only appeared a couple of times as Kern. He had arrived, he was in Sins of the Father, and he was in Redemption.
right.
And the next thing, he is in The Visitor. This is like, hang on, but he's always been around. Not really. So he comes along and, and here he is, and he's talking to Rachel Robinson, daughter of, which I thought was so cool. Found that out years later, daughter of Andrew Robinson, and went, aha, this is amazing. And I was, as I say, I experimented with being a writer young, so there was bits of that I identified with. But also just this idea of a love so powerful between father and son that it is both guiding and destructive. It kills Jake in the end. His need and his inability to let go of his dad. And although it is, in a way, it's a happy ending because we get to, it goes back and Jake and Ben are together again, it is heartbreaking that Jake lived a whole life just looking for his dad. And I think again, as the years have gone on, I've learned a bit more about the world. I am lucky I'm in a position where my dad is still with us, and he's, we get on very, very well. So it's not so much that aspect of the episode, the loss of a parent, that I identify with, but the loss of family is something, as I've grown up, is something I've definitely identified with more. And then, you also have just, it's in snippets where he's married, but it breaks apart. He's doing this thing, but his obsession takes over. And I think probably all of us have had something where we were doing something and then another obsession took over. Like you mentioned hyperfocus there a moment ago, and this is hyperfocus of the episode. We have the return of those All Good Things uniforms, which is great. We have old age makeup on Alexander Siddig, and my God, they didn't know what the future was going to look like, because that man has aged like a fine wine. And, which I think is hilarious. Like, kind of, he aged better than he ever would have thought. We get, obviously, grown up Nog, which is just fantastic as well. But most of all, you have a whole episode building to that final scene between Tony Todd's Jake Sisko and Ben Sisko. And Ben's realization of the sacrifice Jake makes, but also then Jake's, it is sad, but his euphoria at knowing, I did it, I did it, and we're gonna get another chance, and this is gonna be okay. And I know this is, and it's not for me, it's for that little boy who couldn't stand to lose his dad. And I mean, I watched it the night the news broke that Tony, but I mean, I was howling, crying, and people were kind of like, "Are you okay?" I'm clearly not okay. And oh my goodness, so that to me, and when you think about it, there's no space battles. There's barely any aliens in it. Like so there's a Ferengi, there's a triple. Like it's not about any of that. It is about family, and it's set in the Star Trek universe. The Star Trek universe being so developed up to that point that you just accept the fact that the captain of the Defiant is a Ferengi. You accept the fact that, okay, there's a wibbly wobbly blah blah blah, it's grand. He's lost in subspace. You accept that because Star Trek is so well developed. And then you have one of the finest episodes. Certainly, I mean, it's certainly my favorite, but I think it's a top tenor of at least Deep Space Nine. Now, in fairness, there's a lot of competition, and there's so much of Star Trek at the moment. I think we've gone over the 1,000 hours at this stage, with all of the Trek that's come in. Yeah. So The Visitor.
Nice. Excellent. That's a good choice for sure.
Yes. And it doesn't matter how many times, because I'm a rewatcher, and Deep Space Nine is actually my favorite series right now. So again, you're speaking my language, Sean. I'm loving it right now. But The Visitor, doesn't matter, and I still have my father and all of that. Doesn't matter how many times I watch it, I still cry. Shit, you're talking right now, and I got tears in my eyes just reliving that, because it was, Tony Todd and how they all played it was so emotional. I mean, again, a little bit older than you are at this point. I saw Tony Todd in that, and then, of course, the other things. Then I went out and watched Candyman, which is a whole different...
Love Candyman.
I loved Candyman. I mean, I'll walk down the hall saying Candyman. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. But, as a little kid, you're not supposed to necessarily be watching that, but it was just... He's a phenomenal actor. And again, I agree. I think they cast exactly who they needed to in that. So, yeah. No, I thank you. I like I said, love me some Visitor. There's of course a couple of other Deep Space Nine, but and other series as well. But
we all have a lot
well
of
told story.
It's always hard to pick one. So
yeah, right. So
yeah,
because I was going to ask you, like, what are, if I'll turn the lens around, if you had to pick, what are your favorite episodes?
On any given day.
Yeah. For me, I was just Little Green Men. I love, or the Magnificent Ferengi. I'm really into my Ferengis again right now. But I think those two, because they are whimsical, but they give you, I mean, Next Generation Ferengis were supposed to be the big baddies that they were trying to, and unfortunately, it didn't quite work out for them. But with Deep Space Nine, like, my favorite characters when we were doing our Trekker and I were doing our introductions, I couldn't decide on Rom or Nog, because of how they were able to develop it. I
She
mean, they're
says
both.
no.
Yeah, so it's Nom. Yeah,
Yeah, in fairness.
it's Nom now. But so yeah, like I said, but I'd have to say,
Little Green Man.
actually, I'd have to say the Magnificent Ferengi right now, just
Okay.
because of the goofiness, the whimsicalness, and yeah, I mean, it's got Jeffrey Combs in it as well, who is absolutely amazing. So
I'd probably cycle back to New Trek, which is with the Strange New World Subspace Rhapsody, because I
Oh,
can geek
yeah.
out on musicals real easily, and that was just such a fun one. But yeah, every episode I'm watching at some point.
yeah, right.
love
Even
that, though. I
Alan
love that.
Moraine.
Sometimes I even think, like, when I'm starting an episode, like, I don't know if you all, I mean, I hope I'm not being blasphemous here, but sometimes I'll start an older episode and I'm on my rewatch and I kind of think, oh yeah, this one's okay. And then as I start watching it, I'm like, oh yeah, actually this one's pretty good.
Right.
Do you know what? You're so right. I recently did my first, like, because I pick episodes here and there, but my first, I'm doing a full season rewatch of season 2 of The Next Generation.
Nice. Yeah. With
And because it always gets lumped in with season 1 because they're wearing the uniforms.
Yep.
And then I
And
will
it
not
is
hear a
TOS
word against
feel,
Pulaski.
You know,
It does still have a
It
TOS
does.
feel. And it's funny because it's sort of season 3, there is a very obvious difference. But you can see,
Yeah.
as season 2 goes on, you can see the changes.
Mhm.
And I think it gets a rough rap because it is that sort of transitionary season where, you know, Riker has the beard, but he's still in the onesie. You know, we don't have Crusher, but, you know, but then Data's a little bit more fluid in how he's an android. And yeah, but before this, if you'd asked me, I might have been maybe a little bit unkind about some episodes of season 2. I'd be like, oh, you know, Pen Pal is maybe this, or it's great. It's absolutely right. Plus, The Measure of a Man is season 2.
Oh,
Q
yes.
Who is season 2.
Yeah.
Shades of Grey is a bad example.
Damn writer strikes. How dare they think they want to get paid? So, but
How
yeah.
dare they? Yeah.
Who doesn't like a good clip episode? What?
Right.
Well, it was the dumb thing in the 80s, though. That's the funny thing. And that's only, again, I've only learned since. I mentioned Golden Girls. They did it once a year. Stargate did it once a year. And poor old Star Trek gets absolutely ripped for doing a clip show. It's like, it's not like it was the only show doing it.
Right. That's funny.
Yeah, but we expect more out of Star Trek.
Right.
We really do. We really do. Now, here's a funny trivia. Is it the only episode in which every main cast member appears thanks to archive footage? Because Tasha and Dr. Crusher are both in the episode through archive footage, but obviously Pulaski is the one in sickbay.
That's a great point. I hadn't thought about it.
Ooh.
'Cause we certainly do see everybody except Pulaski in, like, All Good Things, but not Pulaski.
Mm-hmm.
I have a little bit of a love-hate with Pulaski, and I mentioned that on the show before, but I would be here for a show that follows her right now, like pick up wherever she's at, doing something, getting into, you know, I don't know, going to where some plague is happening and she's helping out. I'd be here for it. I'd be here for it.
What's going to do is, come here, because what they do is they'll just, at the end of every season, put her back through the transporter, de-age her by another 20 years, and she's fine. The show's endless.
She should be rocking that transporter
Yeah.
every last day. I would be.
100%. Why wouldn't you?
No,
You know what I mean? Like, like, how many times has the transporter turned back the clock? I don't know, like, why is this not the done thing? But yeah, I was watching Unnatural Selection there, and it's like, yep. They literally, like, we get some hair, we'll just beam her back with that.
Right.
All right, Grant, the only person that can't do that is Picard. But, like, other than that,
Right.
Uh-huh.
That's awesome. Sean, speaking of kind of inventions, is there a particular invention from Star Trek that you would want to come to reality that maybe isn't right now?
And how would you use it personally?
Yes.
now there we go. All right, so all joking aside, it is the transporter, right? Because I flipped between transporter. I always do between transporter and replicator, right?
Sure.
So
They're kind of the same. You know.
So yeah, they're kind of like, you know, well, Exactly. Depending on what you believe at the transporter, you might be killed and replicated every single time. I love that. It's the darkest theory, but I love that theory.
I do.
The transport, I mean, in a way, very obvious reasons. Like, I'm sorry to everyone in the aviation industry, which would close overnight, but, think about how much time it would save. Suddenly, it takes you a day to get to New Zealand from here. No, you do it in 2 seconds. So I think there could be a greater understanding between humanity when these physical distances are removed. We would also, I will have to say, along with transporters, you would, of course, have to invent some sort of transporter blocker. Otherwise, doors don't exist anymore. There's no point in having a house alarm when you beam in and beam out before you can do anything about it. So, there has to be a little bit of something like that.
You need shields.
100%. But safe was, it just stores you in the buffer. We're not going to have you being bit by bit, have a bit of a motion picture going, ugh. Okay, I know you wanted Spock back, but that was a bit extreme. And yeah, so it would, and just overnight, so much pollution would just be gone, because you think about carbon footprint of just cars, how many billions of cars are on the planet, and airplanes, cruise ships, all of them. So, I mean, there would also be the war against, the oil industry and all that sort of thing. So I'm not saying it would be a peaceful invention, but definitely, I just think that makes the most sense. So, because with that, then, once we figure it, this is going to sound very Roddenberry-esque, but once we figure out how to live together, if you've got a certain type of food that only exists in South Africa, for example, you can have that to Scotland in 2 seconds. Yeah. You don't have to worry about things going off or things, not traveling well. Suddenly, you've got a hunger issue that is no longer an issue. Now, once we, as I say, we manage to get to the acquisition of wealth is no longer a driving force, which won't happen today or tomorrow, we would actually be able to use these things for good then. And depending on the range of it, suddenly it doesn't take a shuttle full of gas to get to the International Space Station and back.
Right. Exactly.
Things like that. You start to see the bigger picture of life. Right now, we only need, we were talking before we recorded about, the extreme heat waves that have hit Europe recently. That is a direct knock-on of how we have treated the planet. I'm saying we because, listen, I drive. You know what I mean? There's no, I'm not going to be wagging my finger at other people.
Yeah, we all contribute in our small little steps, and we can all make little steps for improvement. So, but yes, we are all, we.
100%.
How dare you for driving, Sean?
Well, particularly, me in particular. I mean, I sit there and I gun the engine before I ever leave the car park. I've got one of those, those bean can exhaust pipes as well, so it sounds like I'm driving a racing car, even though I'm just destroying the engine. But no, I think a transporter, just for me, makes absolutely the most sense. Replicator, well, because we've already got 3D printers. Now, the only thing, we can't currently do food with them. If we could do food, then that might change how I would see, sort of 3D printers altogether. So as soon as we can learn how to eat filament, which probably won't be that far in the future when you think about it. Sugar paper exists.
Who knows? Maybe we're eating filament already and we don't know it. They just disguise it as beef.
I mean, how many microplastics are in everything we eat anyway? So, maybe humanity is evolving to being able to consume these things. Oh, we've gone from Star Trek to X-Men. Oh, I'm okay with this. Right. We've got Patrick Stewart as the crossover.
Yep.
But, yeah, I think the transporter, which was this wonderful cost-saving invention because they couldn't afford to build a shuttle to send them down to a planet every week, which I thought was just simplest thing ever. Boom, down the planet. No, don't worry about it. Was actually one of the greatest ideas in the original series. For kind of, it takes away the distance between people as much as everything else does. And once you can do that, and you can see that actually we are all, I know I sound very kumbaya, but it's a Star Trek podcast. Yeah. But once you can see that we are all living together and we are all, a stone's throw away from each other, maybe we start to figure out how to live with each other a little bit better.
Yes. That's what we need.
Absolutely.
So speaking of these kumbaya moments and how Star Trek can really or at least in the ideal sense, it can teach us to really accept people for who they are and meet each other where they're at. But with that in mind, and all of Star Trek that you've consumed, which is apparently all of Star Trek.
I've seen 1 or 2 episodes.
Yeah. Is there a moment that comes to mind, to the top of your mind, that was really a mind-blowing moment with an episode? Like, whoa, didn't see that one coming.
There's a few. There's a few, which I know is a cop-out answer, but there is a few. I think one that I've revisited as an adult, because I was 6 when it aired, so it definitely hit a bit different. It's Picard realizing the paradox in all good things.
Yeah.
And then the conversation that follows on from there about, Q speaking to Picard about, it's not about warping from planet to planet, and it's not about, the thing of the week. It's about expanding the bounds of existence.
Mm-hmm.
It's about thinking beyond the everyday and thinking beyond the, poor old Data and Deanna get used in a bit cruelly. They're like, Deanna's pedantic psychobabble, which I think is a bit cruel, Q. But this idea of, as big as the universe is, it is nothing compared to what it could be.
Mm-hmm.
And that conversation is something that I come back to in my own life. And we all know there are days when you're waiting in line at the supermarket, or the car needs petrol, or it's raining, and you're just like, is this it? Is this, what am I getting out of bed for in the morning to go and stand in a queue? And I'm not saying that every single time I think, well, do you remember that conversation between Q and Picard, and I suddenly feel better? That's not always the case. You're kind of like, why is that Irishman just kind of zoned out there? He's next in the queue. But there are days when I sit there and I go, yeah, today was mundane, but tomorrow could be something completely different. Could be better, could be worse, but it could be different. And that has helped. That really, really, really has helped. And I think of Picard running through the ship in his bare feet, and he runs up, and I remember, it's the chicken and the egg, Will. It's the chicken and the egg. And those are questions that I cycle back around to. And I think maybe it's part of being a Trekkie, but it's also, or a Trekker, and it's also part of being a sci-fi fan in general. I think to be interested in science fiction is to think, what else is there? Probably you could say the same of probably fantasy, of, well, to be honest, so many things really. But I think it's really tied in with science fiction. And some of the science fiction that I enjoy the most it's more metaphysical. I love me a good space battle. I do. I like action as well. But I'll take action in action, where sci-fi is, I like the idea of 2 people sitting in a room talking about the mysteries of existence. I will watch that again and again and again, because I think there will be something different to say every single time.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
100%. So
And sometimes people will, like, I don't know, they'll make fun of or laugh about the boldly going, or no one has gone before, but there's always someone there. And in my mind, I'm always like, that's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about a physical place. We're boldly going mentally into like new territory of thought and existence and acceptance. And yeah, I know it's a joke, so I can take the joke, but I always hear that. I'm always internally like, y'all just don't get it. Doesn't matter if there's other humanoids there. It's the thoughts.
Right.
Yeah.
How are you going to interact with a race or, an environment that you've never been in before? Or what have you learned from past experiences? So, because again, I think, stagnation, it's practically death. If you just
take our
are stagnant, you've got to open. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's like, all we can do is try and do something more.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, Seán, kind of going to put this on you. we've got new Trek, and actually since we just finished, or they just finished, I'm not in it, I wish, but Starfleet Academy, if you could create a new Star Trek show, what would your premise be?
I would like to do something that is less action oriented.
Sure.
And actually, no, I don't want to talk about what it's not. I want to do something that kind of gets back to this idea of exploration.
Yeah.
And be that personal exploration, but also I want a bit of space exploration as well. To do that, I think Academy had the absolute right idea of set it beyond the stuff we already know. I think they had the right idea in doing that, because I feel like once you're playing in a sandbox where you know that if you go left, the Cardassians are there, and if you go right,
Yep.
the Klingons are there,
Sure.
you're sort of like, you have rules you have to follow, which is my coded way of saying, can we not do prequels anymore, please?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I would be like, kind of maybe maybe sort of 25th, 26th century, a little bit far enough forward that you're not going to run into the same people every week, but you have a sense of mystery again. So that's right. I think that's when I would set it. And what I would do is probably not too dissimilar to, kind of Next Generation or Voyager. Voyager I really like because it went back to mystery. I think it probably skewed a bit too close to the Next Generation, but it's still a great premise. It's this idea of you don't have, a bit like DS9, you don't have Starfleet at your back every week. You don't have, oh no, we have an issue. Well, that's okay because 200 ships are going to back me up right now. Now, we don't have to go as far away as, say, Voyager did. But, this idea of, I want deep space exploration again. It's something novels have done. Like the Titan was off on 5-year missions because they're so far away from Star. It just takes a while to get back to the center of the Federation. And even that's something I know Discovery did with getting the Enterprise out of the Klingon War, is they were so far away that it just took them a while to get back. What I would probably do is I would take the toys available to me. Maybe there's a reason the spore drive cannot be, there's a reason we didn't tell Janeway about the spore drive. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like it had some calamity. Because right, I love the joke, but right now it does just feel like, you could have mentioned it.
Right.
Come on now.
Yeah,
Like,
we know it went
it's a
in the mothball, but you could have pulled it out for your ship that's that far away and told them.
I'm like, listen, do whatever this might not work, but you could give this, technology a try. Put it on a shuttle. Anyway, but I would say take all those kind of the little gags and everything. Why didn't it work? It wouldn't be the job of this new show, which is still very woolly, but it wouldn't be the job to patch every continuity issue, because I think you could spend seasons doing that, and then it's not its own show. But all that aside, I want it to be its own show. I don't want it to be a prequel, because then you've got the headache of it being a prequel.
And too much.
I don't want it to be it will be a spin-off in the fact that it's another Star Trek series.
Yeah.
But I don't want it to be, for example, I'm going to sacrilege here.
Yeah.
I could take or leave a show set on the Enterprise G.
Okay.
I would every bit of Star Trek you want to send me, I will watch it and I will love it. But I don't necessarily need Captain 7 of 9 on the Enterprise G following directly on from Star Trek Picard. This idea of Star Trek Legacy, that, look, it's not happening for many reasons, but also I think there's a time and a place. They're doing that now in the comics. There is a time and a place for stories like that. I think there's great story potential there, but for a series to stand on its own, new ship, new crew, new exploration, new alien races. We do not know every single alien race in the Milky Way galaxy.
Yes.
Also, nothing to say we have to stay in the Milky Way galaxy. Discovery was able to. I actually really like what Discovery did with the barrier.
I thought they would have gone to a different like galaxy because they had that potential, and I was like,
Yeah.
"Ooh, this show could go in so many directions." They went into the
100%.
future, which was fine, but I totally was expecting them to just fly on the whole other side of the universe. You know?
Right, 100%. I think, and they can, and then like it's easy now, even though there's shows set in the future. It's easy to be like, right, well, we can say something, and then we can destroy a machine, and then oops, we can't be used until the 32nd century. Like there's ways and means around everything,
Sure.
So exploration, it's sort of, in a way, it's a bit like TNG, but because I would worry a little bit that where we are in the real world and what's happening with Paramount and what's happening with the new owners, I think it's very likely we're looking at a reboot, if I'm honest. That's what I think is probably most likely. I think we'll get a movie before we get a series. Now, the J.J. Abrams films, I think they managed to walk a fine line of, they were a reboot, but they still managed to have enough, like there was enough recognizable Star Trek elements in that to be like, I absolutely see what you're doing here. I see the fun. I see, how we're kind of having our cake and eating it too. But they were, for all intents and purposes, a reboot. I think we're looking at a reboot again. And as long as it's still Star Trek, I'm not inherently against that. Because, I mean, listen, all you need to do is go, it's an alternate universe. Boom, there you go. Do whatever you want. And then you don't have to worry about stepping on top.
It's a little ironic because with Star Trek, we are supposed to always be boldly going to new things. And then it's constantly, the audience really wants to see the old cast rebooted again and again. And again, it's like
how many
actually,
times
I
are we
think
going to
if
see
you
Kirk
would
and
give us
Spock?
some characters, we'd
Right.
be here for it. But
Yeah.
when you do give us new characters, you don't give us enough time, like canceling Academy already. And it's like, you got to give people a chance to connect and fall in love and want to see more. So I'm here for the new characters all the way. I think there's so much. And I think to your point earlier, there are so many alien species we haven't met yet that it's like, the Enterprise and TOS may have been going in this little quadrant of the galaxy over here, but just turn like here, and there's an infinite other number of species you could find and interact with. So I'm here for that for sure. For sure.
Space is big. you
Yeah.
know, and that's something probably, I think TNG still considered space big. DS9, by its nature, space was big. But then it started to get, I mean, okay, the whole premise of Voyager is that space is so big it takes so long to get home. And yet it kind of went, a little bit smaller. Like, we've meeting people every week. That's fine. But space is big and space can be lonely. It doesn't have to be bad. There's good lonely and bad lonely. It can be lonely. And you can still do exploration. A nebula can be as interesting as a planet full of XYZ.
Yes.
Like, again, that's something Voyager did very well, is that they took space phenomena and they were able to make that very interesting. You had the whole episode where it gets twisted into bits, which is, look, it's nonsense, but it's Star Trek.
Yeah.
So that's what I want. I want a show about exploration. I want a show boldly going. He says as the DS9 fan, but I want a show boldly going. I want a crew that I can get behind. Don't, and I say this with love to shows like the original series, Enterprise, Discovery a little bit. It's like, give us the ensemble, because I think Star Trek does really well with an ensemble. And I realized then, there's only so much you can do with a pilot. And here's this person and this person and this person and this person. I do have sympathy for that as well.
Yeah.
But because like DS9, you met the whole cast in the ensemble, but it was still a while. I keep forgetting Nog is in the pilot. Like, that's how many people are in the pilot of DS9.
Yeah.
But there is a lot. There's a lot you can do, and then the savvy business decisions which have to be taken into account. It's so funny. Years ago, you never thought about whether this will test well or, whether you'll get the viewers or something. I think one show, which is possibly what hurt Academy's viewing figures, is that obviously Strange New Worlds ongoing. It's only 2 shows, but I think focus on one, advertise the crap out of it. Don't do what they did with Prodigy, which is like, by the way, did you know that there's another Star Trek show out there, and but we're not going to advertise it or put a trailer out for it or anything like that. It's one of the best Star Trek shows ever made.
Yeah,
and yes,
right.
Yeah.
I was going to actually ask you about that, Sean, because honestly, not enough adults have seen it, in my opinion. It's how I got my nephews and my niece on it. Niece doesn't care as much about it, but my middle nephew, he is all gung-ho Star Trek now. So
it
Nice.
is fabulous. Like, I would, honest to goodness, if I was say to anyone, what would be your introduction to Star Trek now? Unironic, I would say Prodigy, because it does the backstory without exposition dump. It's beautiful, and yes, it is younger, welcoming, but it's not a kids show.
right.
And it was, there's many reasons that the Nickelodeon logo did nothing to help it. The fact that no one knew how to advertise it did nothing to help it. And then the travesty that was removing it from Paramount Plus.
Right. Yeah.
Come to Paramount Plus, the home of Star Trek, asterisks.
Yeah.
Except.
Yeah.
Awesome. So being a Star Trek fan, and you are, again, knee deep, actually waist deep, no, neck deep in the fandom, let's say, or
I'm drowned. I am well over my head. Yeah.
fully submerged in the Trekdom, let's say. How would you say being a fan has shaped your life then? Because obviously.
It's funny. So we're all chatting. So there's the obvious about it is I think being a Trekkie makes you a better person. And I'm always like, I'll say that and I mean it. Like, I'm not saying that being a Star Wars fan doesn't make you a better person. I'm not saying this. So my experience, my life has been, I grew up watching a series of shows that taught me to listen, engage, and try and understand people or places that I did not have an understanding of. And that is, people who look different from me, people who sound different from me. And then as I've grown up, I can see people who just live different from me. And for me, being a Star Trek fan has encouraged me to actively seek out and understand where something that I would have had no lived experience before. It has helped me understand myself an awful lot more. Going away from Star Trek and coming back to it, as I did in my teens, helped me as well, because it was like, it was like putting on an old pair of shoes. When I came back to it, they fit straight away. They were just as comfortable. I'd got my groove in them again. But I had to go and walk in another pair of shoes for a while to realize that, and I got to explore more things. And I saw Battlestar Galactica, the reimagined one, which was, again, an amazing show. It's not about understanding each other, and it's not about seeking out strange new worlds, but it was very much a reaction to the world at the time that I was living in, and it did help me to a certain extent understand that. And when I came back then to Star Trek, it was, trying to sort of look past the things that will frighten us about other people, or the things that will confuse us, or, the differences. Because, oh my God, I could list all of the differences I have, even to the two of yourselves. We are all different people. We do things differently. We see things differently. But we also all come from a place of, we want to boldly go into new realms of exploration. You can't do that alone.
No.
To a certain extent, maybe you can, but maybe you need to have, if you want to explore something, it's like, look, I can read the Wikipedia article, no shade to Wikipedia, but like, to really understand something, you kind of got to live it and you've got to experience it. And that is something that Star Trek has encouraged me to do. It's funny, because I live in the south of Ireland, and I live a little bit rural. So it's funny because physically I've kind of gone a little bit, the world has got a little bit smaller.
Yeah.
And yet over the last few years, thanks in no small part to my work with Star Trek, I've been lucky enough to travel. I've got to go to conventions. I've got to meet other people. And to a person, if I walk into a convention, I know I can talk to somebody. And I straight away have something to talk about. And even, all right, 90% of the time, it's about Star Trek. But it's not always about Star Trek. But when you're talking to a Star Trek fan, you always have something to talk about.
Yep.
And that is my experience with this franchise, with this universe. And I'm certain, I know for a fact that there are similar stories across other fandoms as well. And I think that is a good thing. I've never had any interest in the Star Trek versus Star Wars. I've
No.
never had any interest in that, because at the end of the day, until aliens come down, until the Vulcans arrive, it's like, the end of the day, we're all the same species. We're stumbling through our days the same way. Well, maybe not all the same way, of course, but we're stumbling through life, and there's death and taxes are the two absolutely definite things that are going to happen to all of us. So why not try and get to know as many as possible? Sounds very idealistic, but if every world leader was a Star Trek fan, I think we would have a very different world that we would live in right now. And those people who are in positions of power, shall we say, who say, "Oh, I love Star Trek," do you? If you're acting the way that you are,
Move it.
Which episode, in which species, so to speak, are you all Cardassian? That kind of, not that there's anything wrong with Cardassian being your favorite, alien species, but it makes me wonder, again, Garak, but just thinking about it, he is the perfect representation of, Cardassians for me, so I'll keep thinking about that throughout. So cool. Well, Sean, we have come to the point of pew 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 rapid fire questions. These kind of goofy little things here. So
all right,
to get
let's
it
go.
started, would you rather learn the rules of acquisition or learn a Klingon opera?
Rules of acquisition.
Okay.
I'm not a singer.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Romulan ale or blood wine for a weekend celebration?
Oh, for a weekend celebration.
Mm-hmm.
I have had my own version of Romulan ale,
Okay.
and I'm not entirely sure I could do a weekend on that. So I'm going to go with blood wine for this one.
Ooh. There's good protein in that, I think.
Yeah, right.
I think you'd be like a pint of Guinness. You'd be full afterwards.
Right. If you had your body swapped with a captain for 24 hours, what captain would you choose? And is there a particular situation you would choose?
Captain Saru,
Nice.
because I just want to spend the whole day just doing the arm wavy thing.
Yeah.
Just, yeah.
Doug
I
Jones
wanna have
is
his
amazing. I actually met him on the cruise this last time, and I've met him before and stuff. But he is phenomenal, and the Star Trek cruise. And then just the fact that he's got I'm going to plug Doug Jones for a moment. He's got a documentary, Get Me Doug Jones, because he's just that caricature that he can do damn near everything. So I agree. I love Saru on that. So. Would you rather be stuck in a shuttle pod for 2 days with Picard or Odo?
Picard feels like he'd be more awkward than Odo, but Odo is quite a bit more fascist than Picard is. Yeah. So I think I'm going to pick self-destruct. No, I will go with Picard on that one.
Okay, cool.
Same.
Cool. Would you rather be part of the Demon Planet Voyager crew, or would you rather be part of the Equinox crew under Ransom, Captain Ransom? You want to kill things, or you want to die?
I'd have to go Demon Planet for that one. I don't think I could be a party to all of that. Just casual bit of mass murder.
Right.
Exactly.
So you open a competing bar on Deep Space Nine from Quarks. What would your signature cocktail be?
Ooh, a watered down Romulan ale? No, let's see. I could be the first and only person to serve a proper Guinness in the Star Trek universe. Listen, as I'm on the record, Strange New Worlds, an attempt was made.
Right.
So maybe an Irish bar on DS9. Okay. My signature cocktail would be called He's a Union Man. And the bar would actually be O'Brien themed.
The O'Brien themed? Okay. Nice. Yeah, I love Colin Meaney, so he's fantastic. And that's also, of course, we're all Star Trek fans and such, but just speaking to you, there were a lot of great episodes and just, character development within Deep Space Nine. It does not get, I'm just saying, it does not get enough love. So thank you, Seán. You've come as my swan song on this. So the best buddy duo, did you prefer O'Brien and Bashir or the interaction between Garak and Bashir?
As a buddy duo, it's O'Brien and Bashir.
Mhm.
Okay.
As an unrequited love, it's Bashir
Bashir.
and Garak.
Yeah. Did you like, I mean, I know a lot of people, I'm on a whole bunch of forums on, Facebook and such. How'd you feel about the Garak and Bashir in Lower Decks?
Oh, love it.
Yeah.
Absolutely love it.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. Like,
Yeah.
what a way as well of like, both confirming it and going, well, it's an alternate universe. So,
Sure, right. I mean, yeah. So anybody who would get upset about he would never do that. He's with Ezra now and such like that. I mean, it gives it, yeah. Well, and again, kind of speaking, he was brought on to simply make Bashir uncomfortable that first episode that he was on there, and just the chemistry, and so he kept coming back. So I love that. Would you rather be a Soon type android, or would you be a hologram with a mobile emitter?
Oh, I think mobile emitter. Yeah, I think
Okay.
hologram.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Mhm.
Today, you get put into the Star Trek universe on a ship.
Cool.
What position are you hoping that you get? Or what position would you say, this is me?
Chef.
Oh, okay. All right.
Wow.
Okay.
I'll be
Just
like
don't
the cook on
computer and
Enterprise,
program
know
on us,
everybody's
Sean.
business.
So, I'm sorry, say that again?
I'll be like the cook on Enterprise. I'll know everybody's business.
Everybody's business. Yeah. I was
Yes.
just, like I said, yeah, just don't computer and program on us at this point. How many times do you guys say that? Would you say either in a day or a week? Do you guys actually
More than
say
is
that?
healthy.
Yeah.
I don't say computer in program, but I do say hello, computer. Like,
All the time.
all the
Yeah.
time. Like the moment there's even a slight hesitation, hello, computer.
Right. That's funny.
Uh-huh.
Okay, one of my favorite questions, Sean. Would you rather have a conversation with Data about art or Spock about logic?
Data about art, because I feel Data would engage on the topic where Spock would lecture on the topic.
Okay.
Good
I
distinction.
like,
Yeah.
I like that. That's
Yeah.
not come up before on that question, so
Or is
cool.
that-
And then last but not least, do you consider yourself a Trekkie or a Trekker?
I consider myself a Trekkie because I
Okay.
grew up with that as the
Mhm.
word, and I only learned relatively recently, like within the last, say, 15 years, that Trekker was a term. So I will say maybe an Irish fan is a Trekkie, but we're all under the Trek family.
Absolutely. Yeah. We
Yeah.
don't do that distinction to, cause animosity or argument. It's just, again, the nomenclature that we have heard over the past. And yeah,
And
I
because
totally-
we're trying to normalize that both terms are
Yep.
good terms and both
100%.
terms are friendly terms.
Correct.
For example, like
Well
I know,
put
like
there.
some of the actors will only like I think I might be wrong, but I think George Takei says Trekker,
Okay.
and then I know like some of the other actors will go Trekkie, and then obviously Denise Crosby did that documentary,
Right.
as well. The second one of which was maybe a little bit kinder than the first one, but I saw the funny side of it, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're an eclectic bunch.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've so enjoyed geeking out with you
Yes.
about Star Trek here today, Sean. Thank you. Thank you
you.
for your time today.
Yes.
Thank you
absolutely.
both so much for having me. I love the fact that Just There's a Doggo has made a cameo.
Yes.
This makes me so happy. This is now like the best day ever. We got to talk about Star Trek for an hour, and there's a doggo. I'm so happy.
Absolutely. Well, again, thank you very much, Sean, and thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed our show, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Live long and prosper, and we'll see you again next time.
Engage.